Hey, thanks for joining us today. Happy Tuesday afternoon. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we're talking about hail to hurricanes today. Did you see that massive hail across the high plains, southern Kansas and northern Oklahoma last night? We had softball-sized hail, absolutely impressive. We've got another risk for storms across the plains again today. So can we do it again? I think it's absolutely possible to get 2.5, 3, maybe even larger than that inch-sized hailstones today. Hail and gusty winds, that's going to be the main hazards this afternoon. We are also heating up, so say goodbye to this nice fall weather because it looks like temperatures are returning to the 90s as we head into the end of the work week and next weekend. And speaking of changes in the forecast, where are all of the hurricanes? Are we going to see a change in our Atlantic hurricane season to something a little bit more active? I think that we will, but it may take some time. We'll break that down for you here in just a few minutes. So let's go ahead and get started with what is happening right now. We've got a low pressure system that's sitting across the northern side of Kansas right now, and that's going to help to kick us off with all of these storms this afternoon and evening. We've actually got 2 rounds of storms here, so we'll break down exactly who's going to get storms and at what time. We also have a stalled front that's sitting across Florida right now that's bringing some flooding hazards just over and over and over to Florida. Other than that, the rest of the U.S. is pretty quiet, just gearing up for that warm up in just a few days. Current temperatures are in the 60s and 70s, not too warm quite yet, actually about what you'd expect for this time of the year. Now let's talk about that massive hail that we saw yesterday across Kansas and Oklahoma. Holy moly, this was so impressive. We started out with just a few small hailstones across central Kansas, but then all of a sudden, by about 4:50, everything just blew up across the southern side of the state. Watch this, 3 o'clock, not too impressive. 4:20, not too impressive. By 4:30, look at all of these storms that we have. Honestly, more storms than I originally expected. I think yesterday I told you we could have about 3 supercells that will do most of the activity. We saw at least 5 to 6 very, very impressive storms producing 3.5 inch size hailstones about the size of a softball, especially this storm right here. Let's actually zoom into that storm that came out of Ashland, Kansas. It took a very interesting track. Coming down from the northwest, it took a southeasterly track. All of a sudden, it turned straight to the south and it almost backtracked back to the southwest. A very interesting storm that also produced at least one, potentially 2 tornadoes as it came into Oklahoma. We also had another tornado reported just along the northern side of the Texas Panhandle, Oklahoma, Texas Panhandle there. And then of course, tons of hail reported in this area as well. Actually, if we take a look at the numbers here, we saw some impressive numbers for September. You know, you look at this in May and you're like, that's not impressive. But if you think about how many hail reports we got that were larger than the size of a golf ball, that was actually a pretty impressive storm last night. To take you back to what we've seen for the entire year so far, since January 1st, we've seen about 1,400 tornado reports, 5,000 hail reports, and about 16,000 wind reports. Pretty impressive compared to last year. You know, we're a little behind where we were last year, but not by much. We saw 20,000 wind reports last year, a little over 7,000 hail reports, and about 1,700 tornado reports last year in 2024. But moving on from last year and moving right back into today. What are we expecting for storms today? All of these areas highlighted in orange and red. Honestly, I think they're underdoing that hail risk for today. What I would expect to see here are maybe some darker orange, maybe those red colors start to move into the forecast. You kind of see it. Okay, I like that. I like to see that there. I think that's exactly what's going to happen today. Those larger hailstones will be sitting in the central to western side of Kansas. I've actually highlighted our area for risk today there in red because I really want you to see where the storms are going to be. Sure, we've got some hail risk out in central Kansas and into Nebraska, but we don't have any storms there. To get hail, you need storms. Where are those storms going to be? Right here in western Kansas, eastern Colorado, Oklahoma, Texas Panhandle, southwestern side of Nebraska. So there's your hail risk for today. Let's move on and let's break down each individual hazard today. We've got hail, wind and tornado hazards today. Maximum hail size, what do I think that's going to be? I think we could see it very similar to what we saw yesterday, baseball to softball size hail. That's what we saw yesterday. One thing that we like to say in the weather community is the trend is your friend. And since yesterday seemingly overperformed, I think that we could see that same event happen today. Now, it's really going to depend on what happens with this first round of storms. That will determine what happens with the second round of storms. So let's break down the timeline here. Once again, I have circled the area that you need to be watching for today. Between about 3 o'clock this afternoon to 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, it's a long time frame, but we'll break it down for you. What we're expecting here are 2 rounds of storms, the biggest hazards here being very, very large hail and strong wind gusts. As we zoom down into this area and restart that timeline, we're going to point out 2 different areas for this first round of storms. So we've got one up to the north, and then we've got another one down to the south in the panhandle of Texas. Round 1, what we're really watching for here are isolated supercells. 3 o'clock to 10 o'clock tonight, so again, this is your early round of storms. You're going to start to see a few supercells coming out of the eastern side of Colorado, and as they move into Kansas, I think this is really where they're going to hit their sweet spot, right in the central to western side of the state between I-70 and then down into Dodge City. These storms are going to continue as they track to the south, and then you could see those storms down near Amarillo as well, just to the south of Amarillo. What we're going to see down there is a few isolated supercells. Pretty low chance for everyone to get rain. That's not going to happen down in Texas today. Most likely what we'll see is anyone that gets rain will get hail. However, most people staying dry. As we move into the late night hours tonight and into early tomorrow morning, we're talking about 10 o'clock tonight to 4 a.m. Things start to change a little bit. So again, that first round of storms will determine what happens with this second round of storms. I actually read the discussion from southern Kansas today, and I liked what they said here. If you already got hail, you most likely will not get hit again. But those areas that didn't get hail the first time, those are the areas that we need to keep an eye on for this second round of storms. We've got 2 areas that I really circled there, right? So earlier we talked about that first round of storms just south of I-70 in the central to western portion of the state, but this time I want you to go a little bit farther to the south into southern Kansas and into Oklahoma. It's going to be very, very isolated in this area, where an isolated supercell or 2 is possible, and I brought down the hail size at this time as well, down to golf ball to maybe 2-inch size hail, maybe. Again, it's overnight. It's not a good time for storms, but we'll see. Okay, up to the north, this is where things really start to change. We go into supercell to multicellular mode, which basically what that means is just clusters of storms anywhere between the northwestern side of Kansas all the way into Colorado and southwestern Nebraska. Between I-70 and I-80 is going to be the sweet spot for lots of storms into the overnight hours tonight. Playing this through, I also think that we're going to see a wind threat and potentially a very low flooding threat. Now, the good news here is that these storms are moving fast, so I think that that flooding threat will be mitigated thanks to the quick movement of these storms. So let's go through. We talked about timeline. We talked about your maximum hail size. What is your hail forecast here? So your most likely hail size. I've highlighted this area, an area that got hit last night, could get hit once again with large hailstones. We're talking about a golf ball to tennis ball size hail here. Again, pretty isolated in this area, so we've left that risk level at a level 1, highlighted there in green for places like Liberal, Kansas. If you go up to the north, your storms are more widespread. You could get half-dollar size to golf ball size hail in this area. But again, these storms that are coming up to the northern portion of this risk area here, they're coming through the overnight hours. 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. is not a good time for hail development. It's just not. Go down to Amarillo. It's going to be pretty isolated down there, and I've also brought the hail size down a little bit the farther south that you go. One area that we're seeing today is we're seeing this low pressure system sit in between Kansas and Nebraska today. And the farther that you can get a little bit just outside of that low, it's going to help your wind shear and it's going to help that hail development. If you go a little bit farther to the north next to that low, that may mess up your potential hail size there. So we'll have to see where that low pressure system sets up. We'll have to see what happens with that first round of storms. That'll determine what happens with the second round of storms. And as always, we're talking about a large area for storms today. Let us know where you're watching from, and we can hopefully tailor this forecast exactly to your area. But I think I did a good job of breaking down each hazard and each timeline for you. Taking a look at your wind risk today, we're talking about 60, 65, 70 mile per hour wind speeds, not only through this afternoon, but also through the overnight hours. Again, with more widespread storm coverage in the northern portion of this risk, Ogallala all the way to Colby, Kansas. Your tornado risk today, no significant tornado threat. Yesterday we saw at least 2 tornadoes. Today, maybe an isolated tornado is possible, but it's a very, very low risk. One more time here. Earlier I showed you the NAM model, so if you want to go back and watch that and compare these two models, feel free to do so after this forecast is over. I want to show you the HRRR model now, the HRRR, some people call it, just to kind of compare these two models here. You're going to really watch for widespread coverage for storms in that area that was highlighted in yellow, that slight risk there. You can see that first round of storms come through. Now, one thing that I see that's very different between the NAM and the HRRR is that first round of storms, the HRRR wants to bring up into northwestern Kansas. The NAM didn't want to do it. It wanted to keep those storms a little bit farther to the south. And then there's that second round of storms that come through the overnight hours and produce more rainfall and produce a larger wind risk. So just a little comparison of the models there. I think it's interesting. Other things happening around the U.S. We've got some flooding down in southern Florida. We have ongoing rain, not only today, but also for tomorrow, and that's going to keep that flood risk at a level 1 or a level 2 all the way through the end of this work week. So a little look at that flood risk real quick. Let me move out of the way so you can see Florida highlighted in green, and I actually think we've got a far southern portion of Florida that's highlighted in that level 2, that yellow risk there. And going to Thursday, nothing really changes. We start to see another flood risk moving into the central portion of the U.S. as we head into the end of the work week. Alrighty, moving on, let's talk about Wednesday. All right, Monday and Tuesday were really impressive. Are we getting into that second severe weather season? Yeah, everyone says we get a fall severe weather season. No. I think that it's going to get a little bit quieter, and then we'll get active again here in a few weeks. But right now, we are staying pretty quiet for Wednesday and Thursday. No significant risks to talk about at this moment. One thing that I do want to mention, I want to get into the tropics here. So let's start with the Pacific, and then we'll move into the Atlantic. Because a lot of people are asking, where are our hurricanes? We haven't seen a hurricane in about 12 days. I may be off on my math there. Our last one was Fernand in the Atlantic. So we are, the Atlantic is starving for hurricanes right now, right? It's really, really quiet. Let's talk about it, and let's talk about why that's happening. In the Pacific right now, we have a tropical storm, Kiko, that's moving close to Hawaii. It's going to turn up to the north and west, and it's going to miss Hawaii just barely, bringing some strong winds to the islands, but nothing too terribly concerning. It'll make a slow track farther out to the northwest by Friday as it dissipates from a tropical storm into a low pressure system, or a post-tropical storm rather. A little bit closer to the coast now, 30% chance for tropical cyclone development within the next 2 days, and an 80% chance for tropical cyclone development in the next 7 days, not 80 days there. In the next 7 days, we have an 80% chance for tropical cyclone development as this continues to push to the northwest, hugging the coast here. We do have some disorganized storms right now, which are expected to organize as they get a little bit closer to Mexico. So we'll have to see what happens there. I think our next named storm in the Pacific is Mario. Now, if we go out to the Atlantic, it's quiet. Not a ton happening in the Atlantic today or tomorrow or Thursday or Friday. No, we are going to stay pretty quiet for quite some time. And why is that? Well, there's a lot of factors that are going into this here, but one of those factors that I want to talk about is the Saharan dust. We have a thick layer of Saharan dust that's moving off the coast of Africa right now and making that long journey across the Atlantic. What's happening here is it suppresses a lot of the activity in areas that we have already seen tropical storms develop this year. Now, if we could get some activity going in this area, I think that we could see something come a little bit closer to the States, but this Saharan dust is suppressing that activity. So we are quiet across the Atlantic for the foreseeable future. So when do things start to change? Well, it hasn't been a bad season, a little quiet. These are all these lines right here are all of the tropical storms and hurricanes from this season so far. At least through the next 6 to 7 days, we will be quiet. No hurricane expected, at least until September 15th, which is a week from tomorrow, I think. It's quiet for the next week, but don't count 2025 hurricane season out yet. Get ready for the end of September because we still have models that are forecasting a very active last half of September. This is not rare. It is not rare to have a quiet first half of hurricane season. This has absolutely happened before. Do you remember September, or do you remember the hurricane season of 2022? Nothing really happened. I think we had a few named storms, but everything really started getting ready. One more time here. Everything started really going after September 15th, and that's what it looks like to be the case this year. Taking a look back at 2024, that was pretty common in 2024. Very similar to 2022, we really started to get going by the middle of September. You could see just how we had storm after storm after storm after storm by the middle of September and into early October, and then that continued as we headed into October and early November. Finally, ending a late hurricane season by the middle to late portion of November. So hail trace meteorologists are still forecasting an average to above average season here. Average season would be 14 named storms. Last year we got 18, so a little bit more active than normal last year. We're still forecasting about 12 to 17 named storms. So I think we still have 5 more named storms to hit that forecast and make that accurate for this year. And again, we're still at the very middle of our hurricane season, right? This is usually the most active time of the year for hurricanes. However, we still have a long ways to go until we really wrap up this season. So we still have all of September, at least the next 2 or 3 weeks, and then all of October, and then we could wrap up by early November. That's what we did last year. That's something that we could see this year as well. When we do get that next named storm, it will be Gabrielle. We just ended with Fernand about 12 days ago. We've got Gabrielle next, Humberto after that, Imelda, Jerry, and Karen, and Lorenzo all on the docket. So if we got that 12 named storms that hail trace meteorologists are forecasting, I think we would go all the way to Lorenzo. Is that correct? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, so we have to at least get to Karen for our forecast to be correct for this year. So we'll see what happens, but we are expecting a more active end to hurricane season. So after September 15th, really start watching for hurricane activity. Also, at the end of September, we are watching for some warmer temperatures. Check this out. While a lot of people are still enjoying those peaks of fall-like temperature right now, it's likely to get a little bit warmer as we head into the end of the work week. We're talking about temperatures 10, maybe 15 degrees above average through the middle of the U.S. by Friday. So as we head into this weekend, it's a shame that most of our pools are closed because we're going to be back into the 90s for a lot of people as we head into this weekend. Even by Wednesday, it looks like the 90s are returning to the south. We've got 93 here in Oklahoma City, 93 in Dallas, and by this weekend, check this out. Friday, 97 in Dallas, 95 in Memphis, 90 degrees in St. Louis. I think that's pool weather. Unfortunately, it's the middle of September and you may be sweating at a football game this weekend. Will this trend continue? Yes, it will. As we head into the middle to the end of September, it looks like temperatures are likely to be above average or warmer than normal. So if your average for this time of the year is 86, you have a really good likelihood to be in the 90s as we head into the middle of September. So this is your extended temperature outlook the 14th through the 18th of this month. And your extended rain outlook, a little bit rainier out to the west, but we get drier conditions through the central to eastern portion of the U.S. Now this right here makes me wonder, if we don't have that moisture, will we really get a very active severe weather season or second severe weather season? That'll be interesting to watch. I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on that. There you go, and there's your forecast today. Let me make sure I didn't miss any weather questions before we head out of here. By the way, you guys, our producer today, Joey, he popped this up during the hurricane forecast, but I want to make sure that you guys saw this. Do you guys ever wonder what hurricane hunters do during the off season or when there's not hurricanes ongoing, they actually chase tornadoes. We got to talk with a scientist that works here at Hail Trace that actually chased in those hurricane hunters, those P-3 airplanes, and chased tornadoes a few years ago. So it's really, really cool. It's some cool research that they get out of that. And that link is linked in the bio if you are interested in reading more about what they do during the off season. Alrighty, moving on here. Thanks for joining us today. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, where we post all kinds of pictures and videos from storms that happened this year and hurricane hunt or storm chasing videos from the past few years as well. Give us a call at 855-334-4245 for a hail, wind, or tornado map. We mapped all of those storms that happened last night. We had wind, we had hail, we had tornadoes out of those storms last night. And then, of course, we have that Wichita storm from last week as well. You can email us at info@hailtrace.com or head over to our website, hailtrace.com. Thanks for joining us today. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox, and we'll see you back here for your forecast